Good evening, Tang Li.
Hey, evening, Kylie.
Hi, welcome to Heartbeats of Hospitality with me today. And today I have invited you to join us because I think you have a very special story to share with us. So a little context, actually, Tang Li and I used to work together many moons ago in a completely different industry. But we also have taken some kind of a similar path into hospitality at some point. So today, Tang Li, I would like you to introduce yourself a little bit. Can you tell us what you do? And how long have you worked in hospitality?
All right. Okay. Right now, I'm currently I haven't been in the industry since November, but it was an industry I was in it for at least 7 years. I had no plans of going into hospitality or F&B or any of these industries.
Mm-hmm.
It was brought to me as in there's a part-time opportunity available.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, since I've not had a proper income, I might as well go and do something at night, earn the money. Somebody said, money won't be great, but think of it as a few bucks that you wouldn't have had. So I developed the mindset that if I go and work, I would be like going, somehow magically X number of dollars appear in my ATM every night. Okay. Given that I had no CPF contributions for 9 years. This was also the first steady CPF thing I had for a while. Okay, so from my initial reaction was, this is something of convenience for me. All right, so I would only go at weekends. I would only, I was just a busboy, I guess would be the term. So I clear tables, I serve water. Filipino guy, he tells me, okay, hold the glass like this, so cleaning dishes, and that was where it was for a while. However, I got to interact with customers. All right, so and through this interaction, when people saw me at night, then they saw me in the day, and then they would get more used to me as a person. All right, so at that time, I sort of had a media relations consultancy work, freelancing, which, okay, from the economic standpoint of view, that brought me my cream. The job at night brought me my bread and butter. In a very strange way, I would earn, so from that perspective, it was one thing, but it was an industry that gradually grew on me. All right, I got to know the people. At first the jobs are, very rushed, very wild, and you're doing. But then sooner or later you get to grow. The industry grows, the people grow upon you, and it becomes a habit. All right, it becomes something that you wouldn't imagine not doing in life. Now, I understand that nobody gets rich off doing waiting tables. Nobody gets, but it was an industry where what I just said, when we were chatting earlier on, you get a lot of things that money cannot buy. All right, became a contact point with people that I had, I hadn't seen for years. It became a point where, in my other facets, I met people who would be part of help me grow in the other facets. So that is where my background in this industry comes from. Now, if you're asking me how did it happen, was first it was media consultancy. So my project at that time was I worked for the Indian Institute of Management Asia Pac, which was an SR. The then SR Nathan was the patron. Funnily enough, I met one of my the link client working at Bruno's, and we became friends from there. Then when I went to work on the IIM project, we met. I said, you know me from Bruno's. So every time he'd come into the restaurant, we almost had a bond. I met another client from the IIM alumni, also became a friend, a customer of the restaurant. All right. There were a few other people who, I met a few lawyers there. Then when I moved into corporate insolvency, where most of your guys are what do you call it? Lawyer. Most of the business comes from the legal fraternity. I started meeting corporate lawyers at the restaurant, and that's how I ended up having a symbiotic relationship where I managed to grow both, have value to both jobs that I was working at. That's from business side, but then there's also personal side. And okay, the anecdotes would be, I think as I mentioned, we helped two couples celebrate. One was a hen night and one was a proposal.
Yeah.
All right. So we helped, this guy proposed to his girlfriend. And on that very same night, we allowed this girl to celebrate her last night of freedom. And then, you get to say, okay, yes, the industry is long hours, notoriously long hours for very little money, but you also get to create memories, which is something that, money cannot buy. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So you then play a role in the lives of people. All right. If you do it right, you actually have a role at those precious moments. You made the moment for person X at their precious moment. All right. Again, I will say this ad nauseum. This is something you cannot buy with money. All right. Now, there is a downside with a lot of frontline staff in Singapore is that, to a lot of people, it's just a job. All right. Okay, I show up for work, I do this, I bring tables. Okay. But if you look at it as a vocation, all right, it can be a very meaningful vocation. All right. People remember you. All right. Now, further on, I had some very touching personal moments. I had one of my my juniors in school, when I was in school in the UK back in early 90s, right? In a small town in the UK. This is a kid that we saw each other. I was his prefect in the boarding house. Then, I came back to Singapore, served national service, came back, and then of course he saw me posting about what I did in the restaurant. And one day somebody comes in and says, "You're Tang Li, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Adam told us that we must come to see you in the restaurant." And I don't work for a very big restaurant. I work for a tiny little restaurant tucked away in the East Coast area.
Yeah.
Near the East Coast of Singapore. So small restaurant, small location in a small country. But this guy from America, who I've known since, 30 years, remembered and thought it was important to send his friend over to come and see me. All right. Again, money cannot buy this. All right. It is something you remember.
Indeed.
I also had my army friends who I haven't seen for 8, 9, 10 years. He chooses to have his anniversary with all his relatives, tells me to choose the wine. It doesn't matter what his meal costs. He just wanted to be there to see me. It's at moments like this for me that I realized that there's more to life than the rat race, owning this, owning that. It's a lot of life is about the intangibles. In a way, what I see about this is an industry where, okay, if you don't like people and you're very introverted, you're not going to like it. But if you like people and you get a buzz from being around the correct people, you will do very well. Now, the other note I'd have is that if you're the type that is the book type, all right, and funny enough, all through my life, I've been stereotyped as the nerdy type, all right? The nerdy type, you'll get straight A's, scholarship. All honesty, I'm a terrible student. I only took courses that I could bluff my way through, and I did very well. The only reason why I got my degree was I could actually get away with my command of language. So when you ask me to go and, back in, I know we're all into continuous learning, go back to school. So you ask me to do things, I go back to a classroom. But if you are the type that learns by doing, and you learn from interacting with people, hospitality is a very good learning experience, all right? Because you're around people, different skills, different mindsets. And then when you pick up on all of these things, you pick up a lot of life skills. And I think, okay, since you know me from your advertising days, and since advertising was my so-called family profession, there's a story of David Ogilvy, who, in his book Confessions of an Advertising Man, describes how he learned everything he learned to run an ad agency. He learned working as a chef in the Majestic Hotel in Paris in the 1930s. So he talks about, passion for profit, letting creative people learn. So it was like when I was told, the risk of inflating my own ego, it's sort of, I sort of saw myself as doing a David Ogilvy in reverse. Wow. Everything I learned was about service, being attentive, but not too attentive, getting back to people. You don't leave people sitting there waiting for their meal when it's jammed. There are times when you need to go and apologize. I'm so sorry, sir, today, the chef had a bad day. These are skills that you get to learn by doing. Right? There's no textbook of how you handle customer A in this fashion, but it's how you go and react. And you realize that a lot of things are not written, but they are human intuitive. All right. Okay. And then I also put that, and that's much of life. So if you look at it, what it is if you take a restaurant and an ad agency as the front, the suits are the front of the house. The chefs are the creative guys at home, right? So, and these are comparable industries in the sense that you're the salesperson. You need people to like you, but you also, because the actual product is not produced by you, but by somebody who is allowed to have a lot of license in their personality, you got to also learn how to manage that. So you've got to balance both sides, all right? You had to put it, one of the things is I was very privileged to work for a chef who's very talented. He's very good. Only thing is, you have to manage his personality. So what we got was managed to build up the relationship to such an extent that we understood each other. And I also, as my job, to bring out the best in him. All right.
That's beautiful.
I think it was, I was still only bussing tables at one stage, which was one incident where the chef was taking way too long. He was criminally long in bringing out the meal. All right. But somehow I managed to deal with him in such that when he produced the job and brought it to the table,
bring it like
they were so happy. So happy. They left a $50 tip.
All
right. And some of this is, without, I don't know, politically incorrect, but this was the local customer, as in the group that is not known for being generous on the tips, right? So the skill is, how do you bring out the best in a guy who is supposed to do, his personality. It depends a lot on his personality. He's in a hot kitchen. It's hot. It's under pressure. In that few hours that we work, yes, front of house, you have air condition. The guy in the kitchen is there in the front of the fire, and he's got to constantly produce, food of a certain standard. All right. So how do you manage the two? All right. That was one of the skills that a lot of people don't, in management theory doesn't tell you.
Right.
It's producing the balance.
Actually, Tang Li, maybe it's also depending on, for perhaps for you and I, because we came from backgrounds maybe outside of the industry, and we bring in like in our PR stint, you know, in public relations, we learn how to deal and paint a nice tone to certain things, and we learn to handle crisis, you know. But it's also skills that are life skills that we need in daily lives, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's the personal. So, okay, I have a 20-year-old kid. All right, she didn't go far academically, but so when I started to get her to, she started to work. All right, I actually said go for F&B, come and work with me in the restaurant. You know, you're going to have to, what you didn't get academically, you're going to have to do it in terms of your job experience, your job attitude. And my call to everybody was that, okay, rather than force her to study, which was not her forte, why not get her to work, learn, hone her people skills? And then when she's ready to study, send her to get the paper. All right. And you never know who she's going to meet along the way. I think within, I mean, this was a girl who was, I mean, I was saying to my wife, I mean, the girl who has problems getting up for school was super punctual. She's super punctual. She doesn't leave until the job is finished. All right. So when she came to work, every dish that she touches is washed before, you know, before she even considers going back. All right. So her attitude, you know, shifted, and her personality, you know, there's something that gelled, and it worked well. I mean, so I mean, it's not just me. This is like, you're talking about a kid who, you know, whose first job out of school. And you just saw the transformation in how her attitude to life, you know, and I was really proud of her that, you know, and the way she handles people. In a way, although I'm technically the parent, in a way, her judgment and reading of people from that experience is better than mine. I think that she, you know, she reads a few things, she can pick up vibes. So, I mean, hospitality, you of course have to deal with all sorts of strange people. Not all customers are easy. All right, some are actually downright unpleasant. You know, you do get the people who think that just because you are paid, we're paying you, whatever, you know, but then, so the skill is then, how do you turn horrible people into somewhat respectable people? All right. Now,
may I just interrupt a little? But may I ask, do you actually have a very memorable incident like that you have turned around a situation from an absolute horror situation to?
Okay. The one that comes to mind was that we had a customer. It was a old couple. He was a Chinese local guy, doctor. He had married a European lady. They would bring their granddaughter. Okay, the woman was horrible. I mean, she would come in, she was demanding, to the extent one of my managers got very upset because she was, you know, I could hear her voice raising. But somehow when I dealt with her, I mean, she would start off with she would accuse us of trying to poison her. We bring our granddaughter here. It's her favorite Italian restaurant, but don't be complimented because we only go to 2 Italian restaurants. All right. It took me about a month of handling her that she stopped accusing us of poisoning her. I got things relatively quickly. I listened, I showed that I was looking like I was listening to her. And somehow that made her mellow, and she stopped accusing us of poisoning her. Now, she wasn't exactly complimentary, but the fact that I had stopped the constant habit of accusations of poisoning her, I thought that was an achievement that I can, you know, okay, I'm not going to get any awards for it, but it was it was a challenge, and it was something that I do remember.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one.
We can't please everybody, can we?
Yeah, you can't please everybody. Now, the other instance that I had was an Israeli chap came in, and it turned out that this guy gave TED Talks on delighting customers.
Oh. So he came on a high horse, did he?
Oh no, so he came with a high horse. So I started off with, "You're from Israel, Shalom Aleichem," and he was, then sat him down, managed to get everything. At that end, he was deliberately difficult. He said, "I want half a cup of ice cream."
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I said, "Whoa." My chef said, "Nonsense, refused to give it." And he wasn't very pleasant about it. So you're not delighting the customer. Second time he came again, and he said, "My friend told me I wasn't creating an atmosphere of delight. I'm sorry, I was off." I said, "I also acknowledge that had my chefs refused, I should have taken the initiative and given you half a cup of the ice, half scoop that you have thus requested."
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then he would come on a regular enough basis. And then he looked at me one day and he says, "You have delight in your heart." And he said, "I like you." He says, "I only come here because of you."
That's
And this was, like I said,
I
this
think
is the guy who gave TED Talks.
yeah, but it's the authenticity in your service, that you provided, and you were very honest and upfront with this person that maybe in the first time you didn't take the initiative or take that liberty
Yeah,
of, disobeying your chef for customer delight. But
yeah,
the authenticity in your interaction with somebody, which I find is something that maybe we don't really have when it's trained to you using a standard operating procedure. Okay, because you serve only one scoop of ice cream. What if the guest asks you, "Can I get 50% because I only got
yeah,
can I only pay half the price because I only had half a cup of ice cream?" Which is, then it creates another problem that we don't want to have.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
fine. I completely think it's okay. But I think those are great examples of being flexible,
Mm.
and also really we can't please everybody. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay that not everybody can be pleased. Tang Li, can I ask you, because I want to pick your brain on this, and I think you might
Yeah,
have something very insightful from you being in the industry, in hospitality or F&B for the last 6-7 years, and then you
yeah,
also roped your daughter into it because you find that it's character building.
yeah.
So what is one thing that you want to keep in this industry that we have, what we do, what do you want to keep? And another thing is, what do you think we should change for the future of this industry?
Okay. I think what we're looking at is, okay, I think compensation models need to be changed. All right. I think, okay, it's not the American level where waiters are pressured to, the front of house is always pressured to earn the tips, because basically the salaries are so bad that they must have their tips to survive. Okay. However, what I find is that most, especially when it comes to rewarding front of house,
Mm-hmm.
Wages are okay. Wages in hospitality, as I think we've mentioned, are not known for being very lucrative. Okay. So what you attract are the guys who need a job. All right. So they are, I come, I earn my few dollars. One of my colleagues who's been around, in this industry far longer than I have, one day told me, he said, "Yesterday was very empty. You should have come." I said, "Why?" He said, "Look, he's only going to pay you X dollars, whether it's full or whether it's empty. So you might as well just come when it's empty and still earn the same amount of money from it." So you get what I call the punch card people. Right? Yeah, I come, I do my job, you pay me. I don't do anything that annoys your customers, but I just do that enough so that they will eat and go. And I have this thing with having been gone from irregular freelancer to steady corporate types. I think too many compensation models in Singapore. We're still stuck with time and money, so you only encourage people to do what they need to do. There's no incentive to be good. All right. So it's going to, and I know from the business part that the margins are not, okay, it's high margins on low ticket items. So it's not like you sell at 2% of a ship and it's a couple of mil. It's like, a bottle of wine is only, at the most $200-300. But you have to, if you want to business to be, if restaurant owners, hotel owners want to see, a marked improvement and incentivize, they have to incentivize excellence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think, it's not just hospitality, but I think I see it in Singapore is employers want you just to be there for long, but they don't encourage you to be, good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, there's a criticism of the American model in the sense that, you pay people $400 and they all become very pushy and, service is so aggressive. There should be a balance, but somebody, I think it was my ex-boss actually was telling me that he said he was in Canada, and he said the waiter knew exactly what was in every layer of a cake that they ordered. So it was that they were that professional.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he can claim about 100,000 Canadian a year in tips. His salary is, but I don't think I think there has to be some sort of balance between for the front of house between the other the what I call basic plus incentive for excellence, because what you want is excellence. All right. I often told my people, I said, I always tell the guys I work with, I said, you must imagine what it's like from the customer's point of view. They don't want to see somebody who's, depressed. I've had issues with people who are, not interested in serving customers or walk away. And I just said, if you're in a fine dining restaurant or a restaurant where they're going to spend $15-16 on a plate of noodles versus, if I want that type of attitude, I go to a kopitiam, pay $2-3, get a kway teow, which is very tasty. But if I'm going to a place where the cheapest meal I'll get is $15, I want to be it presented properly. I do not want to, I'm not asking for much. I like to see a smiley face because, my day is filled with, grumpy people. So when I go and spend money on food, I want, the food must be good. It goes without saying that the food must be good, but I expect a certain pleasantness and enthusiasm when I, as a customer, show up. Which leads me to the anecdote I was once told by a Frenchman. He said, train your people that they should be stressed when there's no business in the restaurant. Yeah, he said, if it's empty, he said, you better be very tense because chances are your boss may say he can't afford to keep you anymore.
Right.
But when you're busy, he said, you should be happy. He said, because that's when you can ask your boss for money. So I think this is what what needs to be changed in the restaurant, in the industry.
I think just owning it like it's your own business, I think in general, like treat it like it's your own business. The mentality.
Now my stepmother, who's a real estate agent, when I, after years of not working properly, when I joined the restaurant, she said, cultivate your customers. He says, become like a private banker. They have the mentality of a private banker that you cultivate customers and they become your customers, so they will follow you.
Yeah.
Is it in, the way the market works these days, the guy who gets it is the guy who has, who can bring in the money, so to speak. of course, I also work on the principles that the organization also needs to be greater than you. So if it collapses when you leave, it's something is not right. But if it, if it thrives, it's. I would also suggest that again, maybe it's not just particular to hospitality or F&B, but it's a general thing in Singapore where on the employer side, everybody is a bit fixated with, I want you cheap, I want you to be with me forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, jobs don't have to be forever. I mean, jobs can be, you know, for X number of months, X number of years, and in that time we grow. But then, you know, you build a relationship. I mean, when I was a student in London, like I knew this girl who worked at the bar downstairs. I think it was the Slug and Lettuce or the Pitcher and Piano, one of these things in London. But you became friends with her. Then she got a job at KPMG.
Mm-hmm.
And then she came back as a customer. You know, so I think employers also need to think that, you know, permanent part-time rather than just, you know, a cheap, you know, slave from elsewhere, you know, that you exploit to the. I thought so there has to be a balance. So I mean, this is probably what I would. I mean, because I'll put it this way, I think a lot of restaurants do suffer from manpower issues. I mean, there are. I mean, as much as you talk about innovation, creativity, letting AI do it, there are certain tasks that you actually need a human being to actually physically carry something and present it there. So that needs to be changed. I think the hospitality industry here, I mean, we do have, there is an emphasis on certain amount of okay, for the big chains, I think the training is pretty good. You know, you have people, I mean, okay, if you extend hospitality to also include airlines, you got places like SIA where they are trained properly, you know, in certain demeanor, the certain method of approaching customers. So so when SQ, I think it called, you know, in every crisis when SQ has had to, you know, put people on no paid leave, they found jobs in other aspects of the hospitality industry, right? Because they are that standard. Where I think it needs brushing up is in the smaller players. You know, the smaller restaurants need to find ways of improving the quality of, you know, staff. Now, we're looking at a situation where, I mean, I'm going back to this thing that, you know, restaurants, hotels don't actually need to be staffed with a whole load of full-timers. This is an industry that can deal with a lot of part-timers, all right? And this is where I think they need to look at ways of looking at this growing group of PMETs who are, you know, facing retrenchment from their day job. So they just want a change of scenery. They don't want to work full-time, but they also want some, you know, pocket money. They want to be relevant and in circulation, all right? I mean, again, both of us came from a different industry, all right? I don't think we've suffered. In fact, I would argue that both of us have grown in this industry, which has affected what else we do in other industries, all right? I get too many people, friends, you know, who are, you know, retrenched, but then they don't want to work. You know, they find it's, you know, that they have the fact that they are seen waiting tables or, you know, cleaning the floor as demeaning. And I'm like, you know, it's, how can you be too proud to work, but you're, you know, not so proud that you don't mind bumming, you know, cigarettes off me. I mean, not that I smoke. So that's one thing that the industry needs to look at with society, the wider social fabric. The other social fabric is, I think I would, and this was discussed with one of my colleagues had mentioned it to me. She said, you know, this girl has worked quite a few years in restaurants. She said, if guys have to go into the army for national service, right? Because, you know, our defense policy is you can't afford full-time soldiers. So says, why don't you make the girls spend at least 2 years of their life in hospitality, right? Get them to learn the people-to-people skills that you know, you can't exactly get a degree or a paper in it, but you learn to get it, and you learn to deal with people, including or especially the very difficult people.
Mhm.
You know,
Just for the sake of gender equality here and gender biasness, how about we give people a choice whether or not you want to do hospitality or national service?
well,
Literally,
something,
this is
I
the
think
second time
for
I'm
that.
hearing this. This is the second time. This morning when I did a podcast with somebody else this morning, we had the exact same conversation about, getting people to immerse themselves in this industry, because it's also completely character building. And it's tough, huh? It's tough. It really, really grinds you in ways that you cannot imagine. And definitely it's an industry that is people powered. So we always need people, just like in defense for the country, we also always need, the people to power that, right?
Okay, you need yeah. But I think you can replace soldiers with robots. But
Yes,
Terminator, okay. No,
people
I
in
think that
hospitality. So let's change national service into hospitality work instead.
I'm all for national service, but I think, do we really need everybody to be in the army?
Mhm.
There are a lot of industries that do need people. All right. Make people do, ground level work. Now, I remember reading somewhere that said that everybody, including the suits at McDonald's, have all been on the shop floor.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I can't remember where I read it, but so even the executives at McDonald's have been there because they know, um, you know, again, this experience of customer facing, what you're selling. You're not just selling a bed, all right? You're not just selling a meal. You're selling an experience,
Mm-hmm.
all right? And I always think that, unfortunately, it's not drilled enough into. I mean, maybe it is at the higher levels at the 5-star hotels. Um, and again, the Filipinos seem to get it. I mean, if not that it should be in I shouldn't be generalizing by ethnicity, but of all the groups in Singapore, generally speaking, the Filipinos do the best job because they seem to have that finesse of knowing that what they're creating is an experience,
Mm.
right? I pay X dollars for a meal. Okay, so, but I'm paying not for a meal or a stay. I'm staying for a a
An experience.
an
And
experience. Now, again, there was one time my stepmom and dad brought me out for my birthday into a very high-end steakhouse. Again, this is where I learned from a Filipino. When the cake came out, he just didn't come out with the cake and a candle. He actually did a serenade in "Happy Birthday," which, although I have a terrible singing voice, I tried it, and I think it helped. It
mm-hmm.
made people remember that you were there trying. I mean, whether you succeed or not, but at least you try to make that occasion a memorable one. So I mean, I think that this is an industry that is character building. It teaches a lot, a lot of the skills that you don't learn in school. All right. I think the problem in Singapore is we are so focused on paper qualifications, right? Uh, there's a joke like in the army, all our generals are good at studying, but to go down, to be with the guys, to know what's on the ground, it's a different story. And in hospitality, it's basically about, the people. You have to interact with the people. You have to create the experience. And again, if you go back to our previous professions in advertising and public relations, we're always talking about brand, right? So people get the idea branding is something that the marketing department, dreams of. They do their stats, they do their, this, then they come up with a design. But actually, branding, I mean, when you're in hospitality, branding is about the people, all right? Actually, branding should start in HR, all right? Because you want the type of people who will deliver a certain experience for your customers. What your customers recognize is not your great logo. I mean, all these things count, but what they don't remember, it is how the experience and the interaction, from how you pick up, your receptionist, friend of mine, who's now a very successful insurance broker in London, did a part-time job at a very high-end restaurant in London. Right? He was just the receptionist, but they insisted every night he was in a three-piece suit.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to answer the phone in a certain way. And it boils down to the lesson, I guess, that what we remember in life is the people we deal with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna close this interview today off with my favorite question of all. If you think there's one core value that everybody in hospitality should have, or even something that you have emulated yourself while working in this industry, what would this core value be?
Empathy. Right? It's very simple. It's empathy. You have to imagine what it's like to be the customer, and you want that customer to have that experience, and you want them to keep coming back. All right. And I mean, it's like when I started working in the restaurant that I was working in, I would go and eat in the restaurant. No, okay, fair enough. It becomes the relationship was such, it was towards the end, I was more a friend of the establishment than an actual employee or an actual customer. But I used to go once in a while, just eat at the restaurant. I mean, it cost me money, but the point is, I understand how it feels to be on the customer side of the table, right? And then when you observe it, so I think the thing is, everybody, especially front of house people, need to know is this is what you must imagine what it's like to be at the other end, of the receiving end. A bad waiter, a bad concierge, can kill off a customer relationship, and no amount of discounting is going to do it. Having said that, I mean, given that you've dubbed me a PR guru, I actually did more crisis management working in F&B than I did in actual agency work. Story that comes to mind was New Year's Eve, 2012 going into 2013. Somehow something cocked up. Table of 10 from, they've flown people in from the UK. The kitchen wasn't doing its job, so to speak. I mean, they were taking ages to get out French fries. We were, of course, packing the restaurant. The guy grabbed me. He was, of course, we had kids who were already, hungry kids not being.
They're not the best situation to be in.
Not the best. So I had to grab the table. Actually, I redid the orders. Actually, he left. I mean, although he left without, I mean, he wanted a 50% discount. I thought he was actually not going to pay, but I mean, I managed it well enough that he actually did pay in his discount. And that was the management of crisis, how to deal with irate people, how to force your management to be responsive, face the customer, and that was, it's just a memory. So whenever I see kids, right, first thing I do is order for the kids first. I tell the parents, I said, they are you may be picking up the tab later, but they are the VIPs, because if they get grumpy, they can make they have the power to make you very miserable. So yes, your question is, I say, have empathy, anticipate situations. What you want is your customer to have a good experience. So tell them that, that they have to feed their kids first. Don't let their kids, I also do tell my fellow waiters or my back of house people that you are also not the artist, right? you also remember it's a commercial transaction.
Mhm.
So yes, the customer decides because they're paying the bill, but you must also give your 10 cents worth. If they're going to make a disaster, you better tell them, because you don't want them to turn around and say,
Yeah.
so yeah, empathy, anticipation, and the ability to create, and the desire to create happiness or good experiences.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tang Li. I absolutely love your sharing, and with a little bit of influence from our past and our present, and of course perhaps even our future, maybe working together on some projects, who knows. But
Yeah.
this is an amazing chat with you, because I think you bring in a very different perspective
Right.
for our fellow friends and families who's working in
Yeah.
hospitality. So thank you so much for taking out the time to speak with me today and to share your
All right.
story with us. Any last words or any last
Yeah.
anecdote you want to share with us?
No.
No.
I think
All
I've said
right.
pretty much what I need to say. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us in Heartbeats of Hospitality, and I'll see you again soon. Okay, let's
All
go
right.
have
Okay.
coffee or like cake at Bruno's one of these
All
days.
right. We'll do. Okay,
All right.
Kylie. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.